place and all those other wastes downstream?
That's a good question. It's a good question, and you know, I tend to think we probably would, because you know, you got to remember back at the time of the decision, you know, we've done a lot of work since then. We've got a lot of stuff implemented. The decision is not just the Parrot Tailings. The decision is all of those remedy components. It's not just the Parrot Tailings is one piece of the remedy. There's a lot of other components.
And go ahead.
Oh, if you have another thought on that, I just have.
I'll perfect
All
my
right.
thought.
I
Just got
Do you know where the other sources are, like the one you mentioned when they had the dewater? Do you know where they all are?
We know where some are. You know, I don't think, you know, there's been 100 years of mining on this, you know, in this area, over 100 years of mining. There's ongoing mining. There's all kinds of different impacts that occurred over the years, long before, you know, long before the current day. So I don't think we could tell you today that we know where every single buried bit of waste is on the hill, and so that's why we continue this process of trying to, you know, go through this. I mean, we've done a lot of work, and we know where a lot of it is. Hopefully, we know where most of it is. But you know, there are always surprises, and that's why we continue to monitor, and we have the ability to take additional actions if we find stuff that's in an area that's still causing a problem.
And just to clarify Chad's question, EPA's official stance on the plume underneath the Parrot Tailings, is it fixed or is it variable?
That the plumes.
What is the official stance of the EPA?
Well, it's currently changing. I mean, with the implementation, when I talked about stable groundwater plumes, I was really talking about kind of the as a whole. But within the site, in areas where we put in the collection systems, for example, there's a groundwater divide. There's a mounded area near the east end of the Metro storm drain, and that has moved since we put in the Metro storm drain, as you might expect. So those are the kinds of things that we need to continue to evaluate to see whether or not, to see what the effect is, the impact is on the remedy. So it's not, the answer to your question is it's not fixed. You know, things are always in flux, and that's why we continue to monitor.
Now, if I understood you right, there is still a possibility that the Parrot Tailings and the other tailings downstream could be removed under remedy under certain conditions.
Well, you were asking about some of the other contaminants, you know, some of the other areas downstream. The Parrot Tailings, I mean, everybody likes to think things are set in stone. You know, I wouldn't sit here today and tell you that those will never move. But our decision was not to move. And unless there's something that calls into question the protectiveness of that decision, I don't see us really changing that under remedy.
And then my question was, what's the time frame for that monitoring? If facts and data indicate that there is a threat to human health by virtue of those tailings staying in place, then they would fall under remedy.
Then we would need to go through a process of looking at that, determine.
But the question is, how soon will you be evaluating that data? How soon could that decision be made?
Well, we're already evaluating it. We continue to evaluate it. We're evaluating the data now.
And so your evaluation to date is still that removing it under remedy is not appropriate.
The decision is that we're not, the decision in the record decision not to move it is still, that still stands unless there's some information that comes to light. Now we're continuing to evaluate data. We're still putting in new wells. We're still evaluating, you know, the conditions of groundwater. So, and we're still trying to finish designing the implementation of all of the remedies.
So there's a Parrot Tailings things downstream. Do you have a sense of just a breakdown of what comes, like what percentage of the waste comes from
Of the contaminants in groundwater? I don't know that we've ever really gone through a complete evaluation. Have we, Sarah, or did you?
You know, you can kind of look at the loading in the Metro storm drain. Go down that capture system. and right adjacent to the Parrot Tailings, you're only looking at 40 gallons of water. By the end of the system, we're catching 400. But that also is, I believe, about 40% of the metals that we catch, also very concentrated from the Parrot. Now, as you go down, and as one of these maps shows, there's lots of different waste areas along the metro storm drain. So that signature of Parrot Tailings that we did with this fingerprinting study, it's a little diluted. But we do know that there are other waste areas that contribute to this contaminated groundwater. So the Parrot Tailings is by no means the only source of contaminated groundwater.
It's about that.
I-
Just as a gross.
Yeah, 40–50%. Now that's up at Harrison, adjacent to the Parrot Tailings. There are, I don't know if we could flip back to the slide that shows all of the waste areas that were lineated in the rod. There you go.
Is it this one?
Yeah.
One of these?
So there you've got the Parrot Tailings in pink. You've got Diggings East in light blue. You've got the north side tailings just like north of Diggings East. There's lower MSD. Those are just the areas that we know about. The area that Sarah was just talking about is, if you look at that green polygon, the lower MSD tailings, that rail area was just the west of that green polygon. Many areas. And we did make an effort to try and sort out what groundwater is coming from which source. Fingerprinting that groundwater chemically as it comes down. And I believe that's approximate. So there's a lot of other groundwater coming in.
And I'd also like to kind of address that, because there are, I mean, anytime you dig a hole and there's a chance that you'll find some mine waste. However, there's nothing that compares to the groundwater you find under the Parrot. Orders of magnitude higher than anything. And I would also like to point out that the rod specifically named the Diggings East. So this idea that even if we dug that up, there's too many other wastes in place, is a little bit of a fallacy, because the wells outside of those areas don't show high levels of contamination. So you guys know the name Parrot Tailings for a reason. It's because it is very, very contaminated. And when you talk about how did you ask that question? Your original question.
What it contributes, like what is the percentage?
What's the percentage?
And so it's a complicated question. You can look at what's in the metro storm drain. That doesn't answer the part about what's in that middle alluvial aquifer, okay? Anyways, I just wanted to make that point, to answer your question.
Just to drive that point home a little bit further, would it be fair to say then that the Parrot Tailings is by far the largest source of loading metals?
That's a good question. It is a large source, but
Is there any source larger than 40 or 50%?
Let me help you a little bit. It's like 500 gallons, 500 gallons a minute at MSD and native Parrot. They're taking out the LEO treat, today we treated 1,600 gallons a minute of contaminated water and discharged it back to the creek at our treatment system. So we're collecting water throughout the system. We put in a whole new collection system at BRW this year. The lowermost pond that you see there at LAO is designed to capture groundwater there. It captures groundwater there. We're getting 500 and something gallons a minute today from the treatment plant, the dewatering that they're doing down there that's highly contaminated. Groundwater. I mean, we get it
But it is.
Would it help if the fair tailings were out? It would drop the load, because we have to treat, but when we have to stop treating water, I think that's what they're saying, that's what they are, it's a big risk. And how do you know how long it's gonna take to clean these grounds? That's the, is there just too much stuff, there's stuff not to do?
You did remove the Parrot tailings and the other tailings that we see on the map because you thought there wasn't a threat to human health. And do you have the studies that you need to definitively make that determination? Are there analyses that we need to do, studies, investigations that haven't been performed for us to adequately characterize these sources of waste? Or are you folks confident that you have the data you need to make the decision? Well, I guess you're confident of that. I guess what I'm asking is, would it be a wise investment of the money of this council to spend some money on further investigations that may reveal that this should have been taken out under remedy?
That's entirely up to the council.
Give me some guidance on it.
I can't do that. I mean, I can't tell you how to spend the money you guys
Well,
have.
of course you can. But
And
tell me
whether or
whether you
not-
think that such an expenditure would be foolhardy, that those stones have all been turned over, or can you think off the top of your head of some studies that you wish had been done, but just weren't because the parties couldn't agree, the money wasn't there, or for any of the variety of reasons?
I don't think there are. I mean, I think we tried to get all the information we needed to make the best decision we could. And I think, we continue, if there are people who think there are questions that are unanswered, we continue to do additional studies to try and answer those questions. So, and to date, we haven't seen anything that would conclusively state that we're not collecting the groundwater there, that we're not being protected at that point. But, we continue to look at that. And so I would say, that's kind of up to you if the council feels like that's something that they want to, that you all want to spend some of that restoration money on. But I can tell you from a remedy perspective, we're going to continue to look at studies and information to continue to try and answer questions that people have when people raise concerns. I mean, we're going through it right now when they're talking about some of the groundwater, whether or not the groundwater in the middle zone daylights in the area between the collection systems, is it getting through that point at concentrations which would cause a problem? And we've already installed some additional wells in that area to try and look at that question. So we're really trying to follow up on those questions and gather more information and really make sure that we address that and answer just that question.
And with your vision, Elizabeth, there's a lot of technical people in the audience. Does anybody who has worked on this project, do you know of any analyses and tests and investigations that need to be performed to adequately characterize this, or have we turned all those rocks over?
Dave, Joe's right, there's a lot in progress right now, and the focus of this new monitoring program is pretty good. And actually, I'll let you know that I don't remember the exact numbers, but isn't there 24 wells out there? It started out with EPA suggesting about half of those, and ARCO came back and said, we're going to put in more wells than that on their own initiative. I don't know of anything right offhand that I would be suggesting you look at. I mean, those studies just need to progress.
One of the key studies that's ongoing right now is the attenuation study. Trying to figure out how the Parrot Tailings, how groundwater from the Parrot Tailings is moving through the aquifer. And I think that's going to shed some more light on the situation. So that's probably one to keep an eye on as far as how that goes. I think removing the Parrot Tailings is a big question. That is a source of contaminants. Another source, though, is the aquifer itself. Metals have been flowing through